Now that ML Aria has been out for a few weeks, we've had enough time to thoroughly test her across both PvE and PvP modes. And while her design is certainly stylish and her role unique, one of the most important questions we need to answer is how she holds up in today's epicseven meta. As a bruiser that brings both utility and free stats, Aria is a tanky unit that scales primarily with HP, allowing her to stay alive while still offering consistent pressure and team support. That said, her performance in actual play isn't as strong as her appearance might suggest. So in today's video, we'll break down her gameplay, abilities, ideal builds, and team pairings before finally answering the most important question as previously mentioned: should you actually pull for Disciplinary Prefect Aria? As always, if you enjoyed the content from today or if you find it helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But with this out of the way, let's break down everything you need to know about Disciplinary Prefect Aria. If you've ever looked at your epicseven payment history and thought to yourself, yeah, that added up a bit too fast, you're not alone. But thanks to AppGallery, there's a way to get rewarded just for spending in epicseven. Right now, if you install epicseven through AppGallery, you'll get a $2 welcome coupon and, more importantly, 20% cashback every time you make a PayPal purchase in-game. Yes, you heard me right, and it also works on any Android device or emulator, so you don't need a Huawei phone at all. Let me break down how to do this, as honestly the setup's pretty easy. First, you'll start by clicking on the link in the pinned comment or description. You'll download AppGallery, then HMS Core, and following this, you'll create a Huawei ID, making sure your region is set to Brazil. From this, you'll then open AppGallery, search for epicseven, install it directly, and then log into your existing account like normal. Once you're in, you can head back to the promo page, hit get it now, and receive your $2 welcome coupon. But if you're looking for your cashback, you can then just purchase something using PayPal in-game, and AppGallery will send you a 20% cashback coupon directly to your account. And then you could use it on ML Aria, Robin, or any character you want in the future. What are you waiting for? Just make sure to follow the steps as I've described and begin earning more with your spending in epicseven. Thanks again to AppGallery for sponsoring today's video though. Let's start by breaking down Aria's playstyle. Aria is built around being a reliable bruiser, generating barriers, and punishing enemies who rely heavily on soul burn. In general, her game plan is simple: activate S3 for its barrier, or use it to begin scaling its damage. After this, cycle S1 to deal damage and continue injuring enemies, and let her passive slowly but surely beat enemies in the long run. While her burst damage can be high but isn't always necessarily, her guaranteed crits and HP scaling skills allow her to chip away at enemies over time while shrugging off debuffs and increasing her allies' effect resistance. With this, you'd be right to assume that she performs best in long extended fights, but as I'm sure you can tell, this does leave her more vulnerable when needing to counter or be more effective in earlier / shorter fights. Let's now take a closer look at what each part of her kit does. Skill 3, Purge. This is Aria's bread and butter skill. It hits a single enemy while also having defense penetration built into it, and this is alongside giving all allies a barrier for 2 turns and scaling increasingly with defense penetration the more and more that you use it. Now notably, this skill always crits and scales with her max HP, and this is where her strong bruiser potential comes from, especially with her not needing to build crit chance. Soul burning this ability for 10 souls reduces its cooldown by 1 and increases its damage, and this will definitely be necessary if you want to see the wild damage that Smilegate showcased from her in her preview video. Skill 2, Passive. This doubles soul burn costs for the enemy team, making it harder for them to use, well, souls. On top of this, Aria gains bonus effect resistance at the start of the battle based on her HP, and if she's not debuffed, she passively boosts her entire team's effect resistance by 40%. This makes her an excellent choice when trying to avoid slightly higher effectiveness debuffers, or if fully committed, she can be the perfect carry in a heavy ER focused team, similar to the way that normal Aria currently is. Skill 1, Disciplinary Order. Her first skill hits an enemy and boosts her combat readiness push by 15%. If her skill 3 is on cooldown, this is also followed by Disciplinary Action, which is a secondary hit that always crits on the second part of the hit, and this deals decent HP scale damage alongside applying 10% injury, reducing the enemy's max HP permanently. This ability, though deceptive at first, does start to impact fights fairly quickly, but as a reminder, the first part of this hit is not guaranteed to crit, so keep this in mind when assessing how much damage she'll deal or who you end up hitting with it. Now let's talk about how to build Disciplinary Prefect Aria. There are a few current builds so far, but all focus on her role as an HP focused DPS, taking full advantage of her scaling, free stats, and turn cycling. With this, you'll want 25,000 to 30,000 HP, depending on whether you're on counter, 300 plus crit damage, or roughly 240 to 250, depending on your set, and again, whether or not you're taking free stats from destruction or using counter. 1500 plus defense is pretty standard and consistent regardless of the setup or set that you use. And finally, no crit chances required, as most of her important attacks automatically crit. Building effect resistance on a character like Aria is luxury, as most would rather stack HP to gain it, but if you have some ER substats splashed across your gear, it wouldn't hurt, of course. Set-wise, counter helps proc her S1 more often, which not only increases her combat readiness push, but also pressures enemies with follow-up damage and injury. That said, destruction or speed set can also work for her game plan. It just makes things a bit more different in terms of how you scale damage and what main stats you should choose. As for substats, prioritize getting HP percent, crit damage, defense, and effect resistance if you'd like, but remember that Aria already gets a decent amount of ER from her passive, so reaching 150 to 200 total is pretty decent, letting her shrug off most debuffs without sacrificing damage or HP. Now for PvP, Aria fits best alongside tanky units or counter-focused bruisers, and ideal partners include Fallen Cecilia for her barriers and her skill nullifier, Helion Lua to control and slow down games significantly, Lone Wolf Pera to provide evasion and also defense break, Boss Arunca for stripping buffs, defense breaking and drawing focus away from ML Aria, and Empyrean Ilanov for preventing anyone from dealing too much damage using defense penetration. That said, ML Aria currently is not often a first pick or high priority target in RTA unless you're specifically countering debuff heavy teams, or unless you're pairing her specifically with ML Lua and ML Pera. Now to be clear, most teams don't work super well with ML Aria, but that said, there are players on the ladder that have made her work. To be clear, there is a good chance that this is a product of building their ML Arias with extremely good gear, but in addition to this, the playstyle required to play ML Aria also requires a dedicated / specific setup in order for her to even find success. Now in PvE, Aria really does have limited use. She doesn't have enough damage to farm quickly, and truthfully, even her burst isn't enough to shine in high level abyss or expedition content. Pair this with the fact that her soulburn mechanic also really has no value in PvE, as of course bosses don't soulburn, and this makes her really niche at best regardless of what PvE content that you choose to use her in. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of ML Aria. Now for the pros, she of course is tanky, HP scaling, and gets a lot of free crit. In addition to this, all of the free effect resistance that she gains does make her very strong in terms of not being able to be debuffed, and this alongside the team-wide effect resistance does make her quite powerful, especially if you're pairing her with characters like Christie. Finally, in terms of her passive, she does offer a disruption to soulburn based strategies, and this can be very helpful when you're trying to fight against characters that take book, especially if they've already pre-banned or taken away Bellion. Now for the cons, she definitely does have pretty low and inconsistent DPS, especially if you don't have very long extended fights, and with this, it doesn't feel as though she is super reliable as a solo carry. Now in addition to this, she does struggle to stand out currently in PvE or high tier PvP unless building your entire account around her, and because of this, she does feel more niche in RTA and can sometimes be outclassed by other bruisers like Boss Arunca, Abyssal Yufine, ML Huayang, the list goes on and on. With this, now let's answer the most important question: should you pull for Disciplinary Prefect Aria? Now while Aria does bring a fun and unique kit to the table, especially for players who like tanky bruisers, she simply doesn't perform well enough in the current meta to justify spending your mystics. Her soulburn disruption is cool, her guaranteed crits are also convenient, and her team-wide effect resistance buffs can be helpful, but none of these feel like they are must-haves. There are other bruisers that deal more damage, supports that give effect resistance otherwise, or there are just more versatile playstyles that you could commit to instead of putting your highest gear score on just ML Aria. And with ML Raz right around the corner, you may want to hold off on using your mystics, as it's very likely that ML Raz will be extremely powerful based on what we've seen with the past main characters introduced to the game. So unless you really love ML Aria's aesthetic or have a specific desire to play entirely around Disciplinary Prefect Aria, I wouldn't necessarily recommend pulling for her, at least at this moment. Sorry for the late editor's note. I had this video planned, but things came up, so this video was a bit later released than I'd preferred, and as a result, this was originally slated to be released before her banner left, but it's of course being released after the banner is gone. Apologies for this, but I hope this can still guide you in whether she's worth committing to / building. But I'd like to thank you again all for watching. If you learned something from today's video, make sure to like and subscribe as always. But good luck everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, good night.